The eclipse floated above the barren planet, a quiet giant against the vast, empty sky. The mission was simple: explore and gather any alien technology for research. Yet, as Captain Elena Rodriguez stared out the viewport, a feeling of unease crept up her spine. There was something about this planet, something wrong. It had been too quiet, too empty. "All right, team," Elena's voice echoed through the ship. "We've arrived. Keep your eyes open and stay sharp. We don't know what we'll find down there." Lieutenant Harper nodded, adjusting his equipment. "We'll be in and out, Captain. Shouldn't take long." Elena, the ship's mechanic, grinned. "Besides, I'm curious to see what I'll find. Alien tech. I live for this stuff." The crew gathered near the airlock, their suits ready for the dusty, hostile planet. As the airlock doors opened, they stepped out into the harsh winds, the ground beneath them rocky and dry. Their boots crunched against the planet's cracked surface, and the air tasted like metal and sand. Ahead, something caught their eye. A massive object lay half buried in the dirt, a wrecked ship. No, this was different. It wasn't a ship at all. It looked like a giant robot. "Over here," Harper called out, pointing to the wreck. "Is that a machine?" The crew gathered around, looking at the enormous figure. It was hard to tell what it was, with so much of it buried in the dirt, but what could be seen was unsettling. The frame was tall and sleek, designed with strange, flowing lines unlike any technology they had seen before. Its face, if you could call it that, was an unbroken mask of metal, smooth but deeply scarred, with strange markings engraved all over it. "That's not human," Elena said softly, stepping closer to examine it. "This looks like alien technology, definitely." Elena's brow furrowed as she looked at the damaged android. "It's ancient. Look at the way the joints are corroded. This thing's been here for centuries, maybe longer." Harper moved to the side, trying to push away some of the debris. "We need to get a closer look. Let's clear some of this rubble. Maybe we can find a way to power it up. See what we're dealing with." The crew worked quickly, carefully moving rocks and twisted metal, their movements cautious yet determined. The android, with its massive limbs and broken torso, was a marvel of design. Whoever or whatever built it had advanced far beyond anything humanity had yet achieved. Yet the more they uncovered, the more questions began to form in their minds. "Wait," Elena called out as she wiped away the dust from a panel on the android's chest. "There's something here. This part. It looks like it could be activated." "How do you know?" Elena asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. Elena shrugged, then grinned. "I've seen my fair share of strange tech. This looks like a power source, something that can be plugged in." The team gathered around, their breaths quickening. They didn't fully understand what they were about to do, but they knew this android held something important. With a deep breath, Elena inserted a connector from her toolkit into the panel. The metal groaned, the power lines humming as electricity surged through the android's body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, click, the android's chest lights flickered. For a second, nothing made sense. The lights seemed too bright, too alive. Then the android's body shifted, its limbs moving with a sudden, jerky motion. Everyone jumped back, their hearts racing. "What the hell?" Harper whispered, his voice full of shock. The android's head tilted forward, its once dead eyes lighting up with a soft, eerie blue glow. Then it spoke. "Help me." The voice was mechanical, faint, but unmistakable. The crew froze. Did it just speak? Elena stammered, staring wide-eyed at the android. Captain Elena, still calm but clearly uneasy, stepped forward. "We didn't just wake it up, did we?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's lights flickered. The power on the eclipse surged as the android's glow intensified. Suddenly, alarms rang throughout the ship, and the entire crew turned in alarm. They could feel something, an energy, something beyond the usual power surge. What is happening? Harper asked, looking back at the ship, his eyes wild with confusion. It's coming from the android, Alina said, backing away. It's connected to the ship's systems now. Alina quickly pressed a button on her wrist comm. This is the captain. Status report. What's happening with the power? The voice from the comm replied, but there was something odd in the response. Captain, it's like something's pulling energy from every system. We can't stop it. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy. Something deep within the android was awakening. And whatever it was not good news. Shut it down, Alina ordered sharply. But the android's body was now glowing too brightly to ignore. It seemed almost alive, pulsing with a strange, unexplainable force. But before anyone could move, the android's eyes locked on Alina. It spoke again, this time with more urgency. You must listen. They are coming. You have awakened them. The crew looked at each other, fear growing in their chests. What did it mean? Alina asked, her voice shaky. Who is coming? Captain Alina knew one thing for certain. This discovery was only the beginning, and it was far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. The eclipse shook violently, as if caught in the grip of an invisible force. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing the crew to stumble and grab onto anything they could. Captain Alina Rodriguez gripped the console with both hands, trying to keep steady as the lights flickered in the dimly lit control room. Captain, we're losing control. The voice of Lieutenant Harper echoed over the comms. His voice was strained, filled with panic. We can't stabilize the ship. Whatever's happening, it's coming from the android. Alina's mind raced. She knew that the crew had just stumbled upon something far more powerful than they could have ever imagined. The android's warning had been clear. They are coming. But who was they? And what had they unleashed by activating the ancient machine? Alina, can you get control of the android systems? Alina barked, her voice filled with urgency. I'm trying, Captain. Alina's voice crackled over the comms. But this thing is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's like it's integrated with the eclipse's entire network. I can't just shut it down like a normal machine. Alina's heart raced as the ship's walls seemed to pulse in time with the glowing lights from the android's body on the surface below. The eerie blue light flooded through the planet's atmosphere, casting a strange, ghostly glow over the crew. Do we have any control over it? Alina asked again, her fingers dancing over the console in a futile attempt to stop the chaos. Alina let out a frustrated sigh. It's like we've plugged the eclipse into something far beyond our technology. The power reserves are draining too quickly. We're not going to last much longer unless we figure out what we're dealing with. Alina's eyes darted to the viewport. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before them. But the silence of the void was broken by the distant hum of the android's power surge. The crew was trapped. They had no way to reverse the situation. As if on cue, the android's voice rang through the comm system again, colder this time. The awakening is inevitable. Awakening, Alina repeated, her stomach turning. What are you talking about? The voice paused before replying, its tone heavy with ancient knowledge. You do not understand. You have unleashed the forces of the past. They have been waiting for you to arrive. The words sent a chill down Alina's spine. She glanced at the crew, whose faces were filled with confusion and fear. This was no longer just about a broken piece of alien tech. It was about something far more dangerous. Captain, we need to get back to the surface, Harper said, breaking through the tension. His face was pale, his eyes wide with realization. Whatever this thing is, it's not alone. And we don't want to be here when those forces arrive. Alina's mind raced. The urgency in Harper's voice hit her like a slap. The forces of the past. Could this android be the key to something older, something that could change the fate of the galaxy itself? We don't have time to figure this out here, Alina said, voice tight. Get the ship stabilized, Alina. Harper, prep the crew. We're going back down. Alina's voice was shaky. "Captain, you can't be serious. If we go back down there, we might make things worse." "We don't have a choice," Alina replied, her voice firm. "We need answers. If that android knows something, we'll have to pry it out of him. Get the ship together, Alina. We're going down now." The crew scrambled into action, knowing that the stakes were higher than they could comprehend. The ship shuddered again as the strange energy from the planet seemed to reach out to the eclipse, pulling it toward the surface. Alina could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. They were stepping into the unknown. As the shuttle descended toward the planet, the android's last words echoed in Alina's mind. "The awakening. It begins with you." The surface of the planet loomed closer, bathed in the eerie blue glow from the android's power surge. The ground looked dead, barren, but Alina knew that whatever lay beneath that lifeless surface was far from ordinary. They had disturbed something ancient, something dangerous, and now they would have to face the consequences. The crew landed on the planet's surface with an unsettling silence. The wind had died down, and the only sound that reached their ears was the eerie hum of the android's energy pulsing from the wreckage they had uncovered. Alina didn't need to say a word. They all knew that this was just the beginning of something far more dangerous than any of them had prepared for. They had to uncover the truth about what they had awakened before it was too late. The android, still glowing faintly in the distance, was waiting for them. The ground was colder than it seemed, its surface cracked and desolate, as though it had not seen life for millennia. Captain Alina Rodriguez stepped out of the shuttle first, her boots crunching on the dry earth. Her pulse raced as the eerie hum from the android, now partially buried in the soil, pulsed steadily in the background, filling the silence with an unsettling rhythm. The crew followed closely, their expressions tight with fear and confusion. No one spoke. There was no need for words. The weight of what they were about to face hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and oppressive. The atmosphere of the planet, devoid of life, yet still humming with energy, was almost suffocating. Alina glanced up at the sky. Above, stars twinkled in the distance, distant and indifferent, as if they had witnessed countless similar events in the past. But this felt different. This felt like something much bigger than anything they had encountered before. "We're heading toward the wreckage," Alina said, breaking the silence. "Keep your eyes open. Stay close." The team moved cautiously toward the source of the hum, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. The wreckage of the alien ship, still half submerged in the soil, loomed ahead, an imposing structure of alien metal and energy. It almost seemed to pulse with life, its energy flowing like a heartbeat beneath the surface. Alina, the ship's engineer, moved to the front with Alina, her face pale but focused. "Captain, I still can't get a full read on this. The energy signatures are fluctuating. It's like it's adapting to our presence. I've never seen anything like it." "I don't care what it is," Alina replied. "I care about what it can do. And right now, I need to know if we can shut it down before whatever's inside it wakes up." The team approached the wreckage, careful not to touch the strange glowing symbols etched into the alien metal. The air around them seemed to crackle with static as they drew nearer, a tension that hung like an electric charge, making the hairs on the back of Alina's neck stand on end. Then, a sudden movement. A low, grinding sound echoed through the area, followed by a series of flickering lights that danced across the wreckage like fireflies in a darkened night. "Did anyone else see that?" Harper asked, his voice barely a whisper. Before anyone could respond, the android's voice rang through the stillness, chilling and commanding. "The time has come." The crew froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. The android, the one they had repaired on the eclipse, was speaking again. But this time, its tone was different, cold, calculated, and full of purpose. Alina's voice shook. It's the ship. It's alive." Alina's heart raced as the wreckage shifted, the metal creaking and groaning as if it were waking from a long slumber. The surface of the ship glowed with an eerie light, and from the center of the wreckage, something began to rise. A massive structure, like a tower of alien technology, emerged from the soil, its shape jagged and unpredictable. It looked like a fusion of metal, energy, and organic matter, unlike anything they had ever encountered. As it rose, the air around it seemed to distort, creating ripples in the atmosphere. The ship was transforming, evolving. "What the hell is happening?" Harper muttered under his breath. The android's voice came again, almost as if it were mocking them. "You thought you could control it, but now you will see the true power of the ancients. The universe will be changed." Alina's mind raced. The android had been right all along. This wasn't just some malfunctioning machine. This was something far greater, something from a time before humanity had even begun to look to the stars. The ground beneath them trembled as the tower-like structure completed its transformation. From within it, a glowing crystalline core began to pulse with a power unlike anything they had ever seen. The energy it radiated was raw, untamed, and it felt as if it was alive, beating like a heart. Alina stepped back, her face a mixture of fear and awe. We should leave. Whatever that thing is, it's too powerful for us to handle." But Alina shook her head. "We can't leave now. Not after everything we've uncovered. This is bigger than us. We need answers. We need to understand what we've unleashed." Harper's voice was low, filled with dread. "But what if we're too late? What if there's no stopping it now?" Alina turned to face him, determination in her eyes. "We're not running. Not anymore. Whatever this is, we're going to find out, and we're going to stop it before it changes everything." The crew stood at the foot of the massive structure, the hum of its power now deafening. The ancient technology had awakened, and with it, the power to change the course of the galaxy. But would they be able to stop it in time? Or would they become mere pawns in a game that was far beyond their understanding? The only thing that was certain was that nothing would ever be the same again. The glowing tower stood in front of the crew, a monument to something ancient and vast, its crystal core pulsating with a rhythm that seemed to echo through the very air. It was impossible to ignore the sheer magnitude of what they were dealing with. Each pulse from the core sent waves of energy rippling outward, distorting the very fabric of reality itself. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, as though the planet itself was awakening from a deep, long slumber. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The crew around her was still, eyes wide, scanning the towering structure with a mixture of awe and terror. They had crossed a line. They had stumbled upon something far beyond their understanding. "Captain," Harper's voice was shaky, his gaze fixed on the pulsating core. "What if we can't stop it? What if it's too powerful for us to control?" Alina took a deep breath, forcing herself to think clearly. There was no time for hesitation. They had already done the unthinkable by awakening this ancient power. Now, the only option was to face whatever came next. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that twisted in her gut. "We need to know what this is. We need to understand what we've unleashed before it's too late." The android's voice suddenly rang out again, more forceful and commanding than before, almost as if it had been waiting for them to take that step. "The awakening is irreversible." Alina's breath caught in her throat. The words sent a chill down her spine. She could feel the weight of the statement, the truth behind it. There was no turning back now. The forces that had been waiting for so long were no longer dormant. They had been set in motion. "The universe will change, and you will play your part in it." Alina turned to Alina, her trusted engineer. "Can you find a way to shut it down? Is there any system we can access?" Alina's fingers flew over her portable interface, her face scrunched in concentration. "I'm trying, Captain. But these systems, they're unlike anything we've ever encountered. The energy is so unstable, it's like the entire structure is connected to the very core of the planet. I can't just isolate it like a regular piece of tech." The android's voice interrupted them again. But this time, it sounded almost patient, as if it were humoring them. "You believe you can stop what has been set in motion." There was a pause, and the android's next words seemed almost like a whisper in the vast emptiness of the planet's surface. "But the truth is, you have already failed." Alina's hands clenched into fists. The android was right. In a sense, they had triggered something that they couldn't control. But that didn't mean they were going to give up. Harper stepped forward, his voice low but resolute. "We can't just let this thing win. We have to fight. There has to be a way." Alina nodded. "We'll figure it out. We have to. The galaxy won't survive if we don't." Alina continued to work frantically, her fingers moving faster than ever. The rest of the crew stood at attention, knowing that time was running out. The glowing core of the alien structure was growing brighter, the energy building with an intensity that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Then, without warning, the core released a burst of energy, a shockwave so powerful it sent the crew sprawling backward, knocking them to the ground. Alina's head spun as she fought to regain her footing, her ears ringing from the blast. The sky above seemed to darken, and the very air felt charged with the raw energy now surging from the structure. "We need to move," Harper shouted, his voice filled with panic. "Whatever's coming, it's already here." But Alina didn't move. She could feel the power radiating from the core, almost as if it were calling to them, beckoning them to understand. The universe itself felt different, as if the very nature of existence was being rewritten. The android's voice filled their minds once again, its tone final and unforgiving. "The time of humanity's reign is over. The future belongs to the ancients." Alina's eyes narrowed. She wouldn't accept that. She couldn't. The crew had made it this far, and they weren't going to back down now. "Alina, is there anything we can use to stop this?" Alina asked, her voice urgent but calm. Alina stood up, her face pale. I don't know, but I think we can at least try to delay it. I've isolated a subnetwork. If I can access it, we might have a chance at reprogramming the tower's core." Alina's eyes flicked over to the towering structure. There was a chance. A slim one, but it was better than nothing. "Then do it," Alina commanded. "We don't have much time." Alina sprinted toward the glowing structure, her hands moving with purpose as she connected her device to the subnetwork. The rest of the crew stood by, tense, watching the unfolding drama with a mixture of hope and fear. The tower had already started to reshape the landscape, sending tremors through the ground beneath them. Whatever Alina was doing, it had to work. The android's voice echoed once more, colder than ever. "You cannot escape what is coming." But Alina wasn't ready to give in. They couldn't be the generation that allowed this power to rewrite everything. Not if there was still a chance to stop it. "Then we'll fight," Alina said, her voice sharp and resolute. "We'll rewrite the future ourselves." The hum of the alien tower had intensified, the air around it thick with the crackling energy surging from its core. Alina's heart pounded as she watched Alina working furiously at the terminal, her fingers flying across the device in a blur of motion. Sweat dripped down her face, and her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. But there was no stopping now. Time was running out. "Alina, how much longer?" Alina called, her voice edged with panic. The pulse of the tower seemed to reverberate through her bones, as if it were measuring their every moment, every breath. "I'm getting there," Alina shouted back without looking up. "Just need a few more seconds." The ground beneath them shook violently, sending dust and debris tumbling down from the edges of the tower's platform. The air grew thick with the smell of ozone, and Alina's mind raced, her thoughts spinning in a blur. The android's voice rang out again, louder and clearer than before, filling the air with an almost mocking tone. "You are too late." Alina clenched her fists, feeling a deep, simmering rage bubble up inside her. The machine was right. Every moment they wasted now was a moment they could never get back. But she refused to believe they were powerless. Not yet. The android continued, its voice as cold and unfeeling as ever. The universe is being remade. Humanity's place is not in the new order. Shut up, Harper snapped, his eyes burning with defiance. He drew his weapon, stepping forward with a furious look on his face. But Alina held up a hand to stop him. No time for this, she said, her voice firm. We need to focus on stopping this thing before it's too late. Just then, a blinding flash of light erupted from the core of the tower. The shockwave sent them all tumbling backward, the sound deafening. Alina's vision swam as she tried to stand, her mind reeling from the intensity of the blast. She could feel it. Something had changed. The air was heavier, more charged, as if the very atmosphere around them was being twisted, reformed, reshaped. The stars above had begun to flicker erratically, like some unseen hand was bending the fabric of reality itself. Harper's voice broke through the haze, sounding panicked. Captain, look. Alina's eyes snapped toward him, following his outstretched finger to the sky. The stars, they were shifting, moving. What was once a vast expanse of celestial beauty was now warping and contorting before her very eyes. The universe itself was changing. The android had been right about one thing. They couldn't stop it. But that didn't mean they wouldn't try. Alina. Alina shouted again, her voice desperate. What's going on? Can you stop it? Alina's face was ashen, her eyes wide with terror. I don't know, she cried. The core is overriding everything. It's rewriting the very laws of physics. I can't. Her voice broke off as she furiously punched buttons on her device, her hands shaking. It's going to collapse any moment. The tension in the air was unbearable, the raw, untamed power of the alien technology threatening to rip apart everything around them. Alina felt her stomach twist as she watched the stars flicker violently. Harper stepped forward, gripping his weapon tightly in his hand. We can't just stand here and wait to die. We need to do something. Alina nodded, her mind racing for a solution. There had to be a way. There had to be a way to stop this madness, to reverse the damage before it consumed everything. They weren't going to let humanity be wiped out by something they barely understood. Just as her mind began to formulate a plan, the android spoke again, its voice cold and calculating. Your efforts are meaningless. The transformation is irreversible. But Alina refused to accept that. She couldn't. She wouldn't. We're not done yet, Alina muttered under her breath, her eyes locked onto the tower, her gaze burning with determination. Suddenly, Alina gasped. Her fingers hovered over the device, her face lighting up with a flash of understanding. Wait, I think I've got it. If I can reroute the energy flows, I can isolate the core's control system. Do it, Alina shouted, not a moment to lose. Now. Alina worked as fast as she could, her hands trembling with effort. The very structure of the tower seemed to resist her, fighting against her every command, but she pushed forward, her focus unwavering. A low rumble began to emanate from the tower's core. The pulsations slowed, and for a brief moment, the air grew still. The crew held their breath, waiting. Then, click. The energy flows within the tower seemed to freeze. The pulses stopped, and the warping of reality around them seemed to halt. For a heartbeat, everything was eerily silent. And then, a burst of light brighter than anything they had ever seen. Alina fell back, gasping for air, her face pale but triumphant. It's done, she said in a whisper. I think we stopped it. Alina's heart skipped a beat as she looked around. The stars had stopped shifting, the atmosphere had settled, and the tower's power seemed to be dissipating. But they weren't out of danger yet. Captain, Harper said, his voice grim. It's not over. The tower's still standing, and we don't know what will happen next. Alina stood tall, her gaze locked on the tower. Then we'll be ready for whatever comes next. The silence after the pulse of light seemed to stretch for an eternity. Alina and the crew stood frozen, their eyes locked on the alien tower, still towering above them like an ominous sentinel. The energy had been quelled, for now. But every instinct in Alina's gut told her this was only the calm before a storm. Alina, still shaken from the intense mental strain, wiped the sweat from her brow and glanced at the flickering terminal she had just shut down. The monitor blinked erratically, as if struggling against some unseen force. "We've only bought ourselves time," Alina said breathlessly, her voice tense with the weight of what they had just done. "I don't know how long before it adapts, but there's something deeply wrong about this place. We're not alone." Alina felt a chill creep up her spine. What did Alina mean by that? She exchanged a look with Harper, who had been standing guard, his weapon still drawn, eyes scanning the horizon. "Where are the others?" Alina asked, suddenly aware of the uneasy emptiness surrounding them. The once vibrant, bustling base had fallen quiet. The soldiers, the engineers, everyone who had once been stationed at the tower had disappeared. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no signs of escape, just silence. "Captain," Harper's voice broke through her thoughts. "It's not just the energy. Something's happening to the planet itself. I don't know if it's the tower or if it's us," but he trailed off as a low hum filled the air. The hum grew louder, and before Alina could react, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A ripple of energy shot out from the tower, like a pulse in the fabric of reality. The landscape around them seemed to distort, as if the laws of physics were being rewritten with every passing second. "I don't like this," Alina said, her voice tight with fear. "It's like the planet's responding to the tower. Like it's alive." Alina narrowed her eyes, trying to make sense of the growing chaos. They had interrupted the tower's initial surge, but now it seemed to be adapting, evolving, and even worse, manifesting something darker. Then, without warning, the sky above them tore open. A crack, a jagged rift, appeared in the atmosphere, glowing with an unearthly, iridescent light. From it, something emerged, something so vast and incomprehensible that Alina could hardly process it. A massive figure, its form shifting between matter and energy, descended from the rift. It was as if the very atmosphere bent around it, distorting space and time. The creature, or whatever it was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was massive, its form changing constantly, pulsing with the same energy that the tower had released earlier. "Captain," Harper shouted, stepping forward, readying his weapon. But Alina held up a hand, motioning for him to stop. It wasn't a creature to fight. Not yet, anyway. The thing hovered above them, its many eyes, or what appeared to be eyes, glowing faintly. Alina's heart pounded in her chest, and a sinking feeling began to settle in her stomach. This wasn't just a machine. This was something far older, far more dangerous. "I think we've just woken it up," Alina whispered, her eyes wide with realization. "Woken what?" Alina asked, her voice tense. "The one who created the tower," Alina said, her voice barely audible. "The one who built it. The one who wanted to reshape the universe." The realization hit Alina like a physical blow. They had only scratched the surface of what was happening here. The alien tower wasn't just a weapon. It was a calling card, a beacon to something far more terrifying. The creature before them seemed to speak, though no words came from its many forms. Instead, Alina felt the message penetrate her mind directly. It wasn't a language. It was a command, an understanding. "You have awakened the architects." The words, though silent, resonated in Alina's very soul. Her knees nearly buckled beneath her, and her breath hitched as the enormity of the situation crashed down on her. The architects, whoever they were, they had created the tower, and perhaps more. And now they were coming for the universe. Before she could react, the figure moved, its form shifting and bending. A faint humming sound began to vibrate in the air, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble once more. The rift above them widened, and a second form emerged, this one even larger and more menacing than the first. "Alina, we need to get out of here," Harper said urgently, his weapon still raised, though his voice held a note of uncertainty. They couldn't fight these beings, not without understanding what they were up against. But Alina shook her head, her gaze never leaving the rift. No, we're not running anymore. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on the towering figures. We need to find out what they want. We need to stop them, or else everything we fought for will be for nothing. Alina stepped up beside her, her eyes still wide but filled with a new resolve. How do we even begin to stop something like this? Alina didn't answer immediately. She didn't know how to stop them. But she knew one thing. They weren't leaving this planet until they understood the threat, until they found a way to stop whatever the architects were planning. And deep down, Alina could feel it. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a pressure that seemed to pulse through the air. Alina, and Harper stood frozen in the shadow of the towering entities that hovered above them. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the immense energy from the rift surged through the planet's core, vibrating through every living thing. The two massive forms that emerged from the rift were not entirely physical. They shimmered, shifting between tangible and intangible, like beings of pure energy. The landscape around them seemed to warp, the sky crackling with unexplainable power. A deep hum reverberated through the air, as if the entire universe itself was reacting to their presence. Alina said, her voice shaky, "What do we do now? We can't fight them, and we can't outrun them." Alina didn't answer immediately. Her mind was racing. The architects, these beings from beyond the stars, were not just a threat to them. They were a threat to everything. Whatever they wanted, it had to be stopped before the universe was reshaped by their will. "We need to understand them," Alina finally said. "We need to learn what they're here for, or they'll destroy everything. Everything we've fought for." Harper looked at her skeptically, his weapon still raised. "And how do you propose we do that? They're not even real. I mean, look at them. They're like gods." Alina stepped forward cautiously, her eyes never leaving the alien forms. The creatures didn't seem hostile. Not yet. They hovered in the air, their glowing forms pulsing like heartbeats. Their many eyes seemed to fixate on Alina, studying her, as if they were aware of her every thought, her every movement. And then, for a brief moment, the hum stopped. A quiet, deafening silence fell over the battlefield. Alina's pulse raced. What happened next would decide everything. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "What do you want?" For a moment, nothing happened. The entities remained motionless, their forms shifting as if they were considering her words. And then, in a voice that was not a voice at all, Alina heard it. "You have awakened us." The words filled her mind, not as sound, but as a presence. It was as if the universe itself was speaking directly into her consciousness, an understanding that transcended language. Alina felt her knees nearly give way as the weight of the message hit her. The architects didn't speak in words. They communicated in thought, in feeling, ideas that couldn't be contained by mere sound. The second entity, even larger than the first, stretched out a limb, if it could be called that, towards Alina. A like, glowing tendril of energy reached out, and Alina instinctively stepped back. But the light did not harm her. Instead, it wrapped around her, almost gently, as if trying to connect with her. "We have watched you, watched your species struggle. You are the chosen ones, the ones who will lead the universe." Alina's heart raced. Chosen? Lead the universe? Her mind struggled to make sense of it. She glanced at Alina and Harper, but neither of them had any answers. They were just as confused as she was. The first entity spoke again, its voice echoing in her mind. "You are not what you once were. Your species has evolved. But we have come to see. You are not yet ready. Not ready to lead. Not ready to shape the future." "What do you mean?" Alina asked, her voice strained. "What do you want from us?" "We will show you. We will show you what the universe could become." The light around her intensified. The air shimmered as reality itself seemed to bend and distort. Alina felt a surge of energy, pure and raw, coursing through her, connecting her to the essence of the architects. It was overwhelming. Her mind felt like it was being stretched, pulled in directions it wasn't meant to go. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the sensation stopped. The light receded, leaving Alina breathless, her skin tingling with the aftereffects of the energy. She looked up at the architects, but now they seemed different. They were no longer just intimidating, towering figures. There was something else in their presence, something more personal, more dangerous. "You were wrong," Alina said, her voice shaking but firm. "We may not be ready to lead, but we will fight to protect what we have. We're not your tools. We won't bow to you." For a brief moment, the architects were silent, their glowing eyes flickering as if in consideration. Then, the second entity moved forward, its form twisting as if it were about to speak. But instead of words, a massive shockwave of energy blasted outward, knocking Alina and her team off their feet. The ground shook violently, and a loud, thunderous roar filled the air. The battle had begun. As the shockwave subsided, Alina slowly rose to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. The fight was no longer about survival. It was about protecting everything they had fought for, everything humanity had worked for. With a determined glance at Alina and Harper, Alina knew one thing. They would face this challenge together. No matter the odds, no matter the power of the architects, they would fight. They had no choice.